We're going to start today with B'shnei the Rabbi Yosef. It's 10 lines from the top. I think Hashem, that's very able to learn. It's chassid learning. Check the base of Migdash. Okay, B'shnei the Rabbi Yosef have a Ritzcha. During the years of Rabbi Yosef, there was anger. Ritzcha means anger, but it means that there was a famine. It's like Hashem was angry with us. The students said to Rabbi Yosef, let the master daven for us. Get rid of the famine. So he says, Hashta, now, when the sages would leave Elisha, they would still be there still would be remaining 2,200 sages that were being supported by Elisha's yeshiva. And by Rachme, and at the time of famine, he wouldn't daven for them for the famine to go away. And now you by Rachme, and now you want me to daven. Okay, the commentators ask, what do you mean the sages daven all the time for this? Okay. How do you know that there were 2,200 people left by Elisha? So this is a continuation from a Gemara that we learned before. If you look back on Kufayim and Beis, there's a pasuk that's quoted that a man came from Baal Shalisha and he brings to the man of God, Ishalikim, Lechem Bikurim, brings him Lechem Bikurim, he brings him Esrim Lechem, 20 loaves of bread, Esrim Lechem, Sa'irim, and Bekarma. Okay. So now the Gemara says, how do you know that there was 2,200 people left there? It says because if you continue that, after that gift that was given, the pasuk says, what do you want from me? I'm supposed to give this to 100 people? This is the servant of Elisha. Says, I'm supposed to give this to 100 people, 20 loaves of bread, and lechem bikurim, and Carmel. Gemara says, my lefnei meish. What are you talking about? 100 people. If he's going to give all 20 loaves of bread, b'shnei batzeiras tuvabi. That's a lot of food for a famine. 20 loaves of bread for 100 people. Split a loaf into 5. That'll do. It's a sandwich. The kol chad v'chad kami meish. Rather, what it was each loaf of bread had to go to 100 people. Now you have to split a loaf into 100. So what does that mean, though? It means that there were definitely 2,000 people there. But then when you add in that there was also a lechem bikurim and there was also the Carmel, so each one, that's 20 plus 1 is 22. It's 2,200 people that had to get this food. Okay. When the students would leave the yeshiva of Rab, there was 1,200 people there, 1,000 less, that were still supported by the yeshiva of Rab. As people would go home to their families, but some people didn't have where to go. They would stay in the yeshiva. From the yeshiva of Rav Huna, there was 800 people left. Rav Huna, there was a big crowd. He had 13 Amiraim. That means people that would say over, like it would be like Chayzer, people that would say over his teachings to everyone else. He had 13 people that had to go into the crowd to be able to, if it means to announce what he was saying. When the students would get up from the yeshiva of Rav Huna, they would shake out their clothes, just their jackets. Avisalik, Avka, the dust would get up. The Kasile would cover the sun. Army Marava, and they said in Eretz Yisrael, Kamalem Zifta de Rav Huna Babla. It must be that the yeshiva ended and the people are getting up. That's why there's Why is it overcast today? No, it's because the yeshiva they finished the session. Well, how do we get into this? We got into this originally because they were taking money to judge a case, and then someone offered one of the Rabbanan money to judge a case, and he said, I can't judge the case. He said, well, at least take it because it's considered bikurim. It was private. So he said, just take it. Don't judge the case. Just take it. So he doesn't judge the case. He sends it to Reb Nachman. And Reb Nachman ended up choosing that case, thinking that it's relevant. So Reb Anan is now in trouble with Eliyahu Hanavi. Doesn't teach him. He doesn't come. He davens. He comes. Okay, so now we're saying that back to that story. How do we know it was bikurim? We continue on saying that means that Elisha had 2,200 people left there. So we're 100 had to feed. Those 22 portions had to feed 100 people each. Saying how many people were left there. He said how many people left by Rav, how many people left by Rav Huna. Good morning. Okay. Kimifti Rabbanami Bey Rabba Rab Yosef, when the students would leave the yeshiva of Rabban Rab Yosef Habi Paishu, Arba Meir Rabbanan. There were only 400 people that were left there. You see what's going on. By Elisha, there was 2,200. By Rav, there was 1,200. By Rav Huna, there was 800. Now there's only 400 left. B'kol Nafshari asked me, they called themselves orphans. I guess because there were so few people left, they felt like they were orphans. There were only 200 left from Abaya's yeshiva or Rav Papa's yeshiva or Rav Ashi's yeshiva. The orphans of orphans. And so there were so few people left there. It felt like everyone's gone. There's a few people left over the spring break. No, they were, well, this is later in later generations. Yeah. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Redifa. I'm Rabami. Yeah, it could be. See, all throughout the Talmudic period, they should have been able to study in Babylonia. I mean, Rava, we have a statement. Rava says, "Don't come during certain seasons because you have to take care of your food." But I'm not sure if we have real oppression. There was an attack on the diet. I don't know if they had like religious oppression. That was the Hanukkah. It was the people that didn't allow any fires. That could have been. Okay. I'm going to start a new piece of Gemara, and it's going to take us a whole page. It sends us back into Masech Shkalim. And the way it worked was that everyone had to give coins, or not to give coins to the temple once a year. Shkalim. They gave it during Adar, and starting from the beginning of Nisan, the new sacrifices were all the sacrifices were all brought from those coins. From the were you with us, Shkalim? Yeah, it was around Purim time. That was during the Mishnah. They just well, what would happen was they everyone gave the coins, and then the coins would end up going into a place called the Lishka. Then they would take out from the Lishka, we call Trumas HaLishka, they would take out at 3 points. They would take out more coins to buy more sacrifices. Yeah. And the idea of this was that everyone had a portion in the communal sacrifice. Everyone was contributing. Now, what happens if there's other needs that the temple has, and what happens if there's money left over and it's not needed? So we're going to see over here in this Gemara where the extra money goes to, and how they cover the other needs of the temple. No, well, actually, in the Torah itself, it does contribute towards that. And they would count it also. Over there, and they would read in the Torah itself. Then we have another thing that in temple times that they would collect for the community sacrifice. It was done. It was all collected by Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Well, Amar Rab Yitzchak Bar Adifa Amar Rabami Mevaki Mumin Shebishlayim Aynetin Schar Mishumas Alishka. Shumas Alishka, when they would take the coins out of the chamber where the coins were in, so some of the fund those funds were used to buy sacrifices, but they also had people that would check the sacrifices. They had to be paid. They would check them over to make sure that there was no blemishes. Well, they were. I don't know if they were kainim. Maybe they were kainim, but someone had to check them over. They had to be paid. Am Rav Yudah Mashmuel Talmidei Chachamim Hamalamdim Hilchos Shchita L'Kainim Hayaneitlin Schar Mishumas Alishka. Rav Yudah says, name of Shmuel, that who would teach Hilchos Shchita to the Kainim? You actually don't need a Kainim to do the Shchita. They probably did the Shchita. But who would be the teacher? Whoever it was had to be paid. They would have to practice. Sharpen the knife, takes time. Amarav Gidel Amarav, Talmidei Chachamim Hamalamdim Hilchos Kmitza L'Kainim Hayaneitlin Schar Mishumas Alishka. The Talmidei Chachamim that taught how to do the Kmitza was a scoop that was done with 3 fingers, and they had to take off it was usually flour and oil. Sometimes it was matzah, but they had to take off the ends to what was bulging out. They had to remove it. Grind it up. They would probably have to. It was probably soft matzah. So they also get paid from Chumas Alishka. Amar Rabbi Bar Bachanam Rabbi Yeshua Magis from Shibishlayim Neitin Schar Chumas Alishka. Well, turns out there were Sifrei Torah in Yerushalayim, and you're not allowed to have a Sefer Torah that's possible. Like Sishkin Ba'alecha Abla. It's not muga. It's not examined. So to make sure that it's kosher. So someone would have to go around. So the Bezdin, I guess, employed people to go do this. Where would they get paid from? Chumas Alishka. Amar Rav Nachman. Amar Rav. Yeah, Moshe. You have to get you can get separate funding.
Yeah, give me the address.
The women that are weaving the curtain also take the funds from the Chumas Alishka. So this is Rav Nachman saying in the name of Rav. However, but I say, I assume that's Rav Nachman himself, that they took it not from the Chumas Alishka, but there was another fund that was called Bedek Habayis, that was the temple upkeep. And that's where they got the funds to pay the women that were weaving the pareicha, the curtain. How did they get money for this? This was other donation, separate donation. I didn't really have a time. But, if people would say, I'm giving funds to the temple upkeep, it wasn't like everyone had. Yeah. It was more voluntary. Because the precious was done under the construction, made under the binyan. I think that means it's made under it's put inside the heichal, divides the heichal and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the 2 parts of the holy. There's 2 curtains there. At least in the second temple, there were 2 curtains. But because in the first temple, they built a stone wall that divided it. But in the second temple, they made the wall 2 amas higher. The stone wall was too high. So instead they did a curtain. Problem is, which side should they put the curtain on? Should they put the extra space? What exactly was the old wall? What used to be in the first temple? Was it part of the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Was it part of the Heichal? So now when they have a curtain that's thinner, there were a lot of walls, but in the temple itself, it was a larger area, which was 40 amas. That was the Heichal. Then the last, that was the showbread, right? And then the incense altar. And then there were two curtains because of that amma. It's called amatraxin, that they weren't sure which side it was supposed to be on. It was folded up on one side, and then he would have to walk between them and go out on the other side. So it was because it was under this binyan. So it gets from the temple funds, from the temple upkeep funds. Meishrei, the Gemara has a question. You told me that they come either from the temple upkeep or they come from the Chumas Alishka. We have a brisa that says, "Noshamargas paparechas," the women that weave the curtain, who Beis Garmu, al Maisalachem Apanim, there's a family called Beis Garmu. They knew how to make the showbread, the lechem apanim, that it shouldn't crack. They would have to be stuck to the side of the oven. That's how they would make it. They could push it on and get it to fold. They would get it to fold into. So how would they do that? There was a special secret. Good morning. Oh, you're gonna do it? Amazing. Yeah. Is what's his last name? It's a party by Dr. Stein's house tonight.
Rabbi Smith suggested that 25 at least for myself tonight, which wasn't very easy considering that we're only at the
106.
106. So I'm right up to 128. Thanks to Robert Stefanski, who don't have to leave the Kennedy the last night. I won't say Shabbos, so I had to barely leave my corner to this rabbi. Something unbelievable. Zachariah resident who does the entire document in 17 minutes. And it's like everything about to listen again. I can read as quickly as he does it. But if you ever need a quick catch up, minus line by line, it's you don't give it 1.25 speed.
No.
I mean, and one, it's like just give it so we do something out to what's it. Please come. It's going to be a lot of food. Very much, just a rare. Would you please put your address? You know where the robber lives? You know where Yitzi lives? No. What staying in Aventura? Just you know what people need. You can learn about that. I'll figure it out.
It's the end of 173rd, right?
If you live somewhere else, but not vice versa, you can force you out to look. That sounds really nice. So I'm telling you, I don't care how sure gorgeous and beautiful it is. What do you have?
Dr. Stein is ahead of us. He's already finished the documents. You have more time. So it's at 8:00.
65. Just go down 173 till you can go in there, knock on the door, which is right and say next door.
Okay.
You see the cross.
The dogs are going to be inside. Okay. Everyone's invited.
Yes.
So there's a question. Nashamargas Beis Beis Garmu, my Salachim Apanim, Beis Garmu also is making the showbread. Beis of Tinus and my Ketairas. The Beis of Tinus is doing the Ketairas. They had a secret of how to get the Ketairas to go straight up, smoke should go up, and how to Right. But nevertheless, I don't know if that's one of
It's
the.
when you ask the corner, something is small corner and straight up.
I don't know if that in that yeah, that's a good one. Made sense.
Yeah, it's a type of thing.
Right, but it would go straight up and then cover the ceiling and then come down. So, Kulan hayanait l'schar mitzumas alishka. They all got their funds. They all got their salaries from the Chumas alishka. Now we mentioned the women that are weaving, but 1 second. Reb Nachman says that they don't get from the Chumas alishka; they get from the Beda Kabayas, which is the temple upkeep. So Hassan b'debavi, that's talking about the other doors. The Reb Zeir Merav Shleisha Seprech Zeiba Mikdash Miktasheni. Reb Zeir says name of Rav that there were 13 Pareichasim, 13 curtains in the second base of Mikdash. Shiva Kneged Shiva Sharm, 7 corresponding to the 7 gates of the Azara. There's a bunch of gates of the Azara. 7 of them, or there's a machlekes. This is the opinion. 7 of them have this Echad Pesach Shel Heichal. One of them for the entrance to the Heichal. That also had doors, but it also had a parecha. So it was like a curtain, like we have a door on the Aron Kaidash plus a parechas. So they also had doors plus a parechas. And also for the entrance to the ulam, which is the hallway in front of the heichal. Beis b'dvir, 2 parechas in the dvir. The dvir is usually referring to the Kiddush HaKadoshim, right? It's the dvir. It's the front chamber. Yeah, well, the ulam is the top of the T, like the thing. Then the heichal is the next part. Yeah, it means the either the curtain of the Kodesh HaKadoshim or the Kodesh HaKadoshim. I don't know if it's a biblical. Beis connected Baliyah. Now, in the attic above the Kodesh HaKadoshim, there was a room, a second floor to the Heichal and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But in the second floor as well, part of it had more of sanctity than the other part. So there was also curtains there. Okay, that's how we answered. So we have some of the curtains were funded by the Beda Kabayas, and some were funded by the Chumas Alishka. What happened was there was an argument between the Sadducees, the Tzaddukim, and the rabbis about. I'm on the bottom of 106. Okay. If I'm about to start it, there was an argument if the people that prepare the paraduma, when they went to the mikveh, they were allowed to prepare it before nightfall. The Sadducees said no, and the sages said yes. Now, based on that, they added extras because there was a leniency by the sages. They would specifically do it by people that were tamei, but had just gone to the mikveh. They're called tvulei yaim. They didn't wait for but because of that leniency, people may think that you're allowed to be lenient with the paraduma. So they made these extra stringencies on the side to show them we're not lenient here. It's just that we're arguing with Sadducees. So one of the strict stringencies that they added was that there would be children that would be raised without ever coming in contact with anything impure. They would have to live on top of houses that were built on stilts, sort of like so that if there would be a tumah down below, it would with caves underneath. And so, but they had to be raised there. They were born there. They were raised there. So these women that would raise their children there, where would they get? How would they sustain themselves? Like a ivory tower, right? So they would get supported by the Chumas Alishka. That means the funds that would come. So far, we have 8 things that come from the Chumas Alishka besides for the actual sacrifices. The people that check the sacrifices, the people that teach Hilchos Shlita, the people that teach Hilchos Kmitza, the people that check the Svarim, the people that weave, the women that weave the Pareisas, Beis Garmu, Beis Abtinas, and these women. It's a bunch. Abishal says no. There were wealthy women in Yerushalayim that would support these other women that would raise their children. It's a real dedication. Rav Huna has a question from Rav. Rav Huna is a student of Rav. And this is his question. The vessels in the temple, were they made from the building fund, or did they come from the daily fund of the sacrifices? Are they associated with the altar and they come along with that? Or are they associated with the korban and they have to come from the Trumas Halishka, which is where the sacrifices come from? This is a classical argument. Because when funds come from different places, so there's always something in the middle that we don't really know where that part comes from. It goes up there like an argument. Who's supposed to cover that part? This fund or that fund, right? Right, right. But if they don't have enough, who's supposed to pay for those things that are in the middle that weren't really set aside? Right.
Yeah, we learned it all this time.
I don't know that, but I understood that from the history of the people that wanted to take over the Kohen Gadol because they wanted access to those funds.
He had an obligation to keep the city of Yerushalayim.
That's right. They did have something like that.
Oh,
Right. Right. Amalei. Amalei ein nasin ala mitchumas alishka. So Rab responds that it comes from the chumas alishka, which means not the temple upkeep. It comes from the sacrifice funds. The vessels come from the sacrifice fund. Esvei, you have a question. Maybe you are melech. Vayada hakayin shara kesvi asukel beis Hashem klei sharif. Well, there was this king of Israel, Yayash, or Yehoyash. There were two of them. One was from David, and one was from Israel. One from David was considered a righteous king, and he was the one that was saved in the temple. He was hidden in the temple because his grandmother, someone Natalia, wanted to kill. Remember that? Natalia becomes the king, and they had to rescue people that could have been king instead. So she killed out the whole family of David, and he was hidden in the temple. And then when he was 7 years old, he took over. Anyway, he has the temple rededicated, and he commands them to collect the funds. They didn't do it. Finally, he says, "Okay, we're doing it." And when they finished all of that, they brought the money to the king. The extra money, they brought it to Yada, who was the Kohen Gadol, and he was his teacher, I think, the teacher of the king. And they made it for vessels. So Rav Huna is asking Rav that apparently the temple fund is being used for the vessels. Amalei, the Achrich, Ksubim, Le'akrich, Navi. Whoever taught you Ksubim forgot to teach you the Navi. It says there's another pasuk over there. It says Achla Yasa Beis Hashem Sipos. Under the same king, it says they did not use the money for sipos or cups or vessels. Sipos kesef. It says the extra money went to the people that did the work, not for the vessels. So Rav Huna says, so then you didn't ask a question on me. You just made a contradiction between the verses. It says like kasha gava v'yisir, kasha gava v'yisir. Depends if there was left over. If there was left over, it could be used for the kalim. If there wasn't left over, then not. But the Gemara says, but if there's left over, so what? If it wasn't dedicated for that, then why should it be used for that? When it was originally dedicated, there was a stipulation by the court that if there's left over, this is what it's going to be used for. But that's how they were able to do that. Hana de Rabbi Shmuel, Klei Sharis bar Mitrumas Alishka. The house of Rabbi Shmuel taught the Brisa of the house of Rabbi Shmuel that the Klei Sharis, the vessels, come from the Trumas Alishka, from the temple, not from the temple, from the sacrifice fund. Shenemar Eshar HaKesef. It says the rest of the money. Talking about the pasuk in Divrei Yomi that we used for the vessel. Ezo Kesef Sheyesh Shirayim. Which type of money has a shar, has a leftover, or a remainder? Aviyayim is a Trumas Alishka. Because remember, they would take 3 times. They would take funds from that. What was it called? Shayfers, they were called, or something like that. These vessels, and they would put them into kupas, boxes. So, and then there was left over. So that's, you see, it was from the Trumas Alishka. Because it's using the term shara kesef, it means Trumas Alishka. Maybe it's not from the truma. The truma is what was taken from the chamber and taken out. Maybe it's what was left in the chamber after the year was over. The year was over. There's no things that are left. We're not talking about the remainder, because the pasuk says ha'ayla, that the ayla is the first sacrifice in the morning. It's the last sacrifice in the carbon tamid, and because it has an extra hay there, the definite article, that tells me that it's significant. So therefore, ha-kesef, when it says ha-kesef with the definite article, the ha-kesef, it means kesef rishon. It's not just the money that was left over there at the end that wasn't used up. It's actually the money that was taken out.
Is this?
I think so. The Ketores and all sacrifices come from the Trumas Alishka. So far, no question. The golden altar, the frankincense, and Klei Sharis, and vessels come from Meiser Nesachim. Meiser Nesachim is left over from the libations. Now, there's a machlekes where exactly that's coming from. Either there was a discrepancy between how flour and oil were bought and then sold. The temple bought it and then sold it to the people. So there would always be a little bit left. They bought it with the measurements heaping, and they sold it with the measurement exact. So there would be a little bit left over. Now, what would they do with that extra? They would sell it and they would use it for the mizbeachas of the Levaino or the Klisharis. Mizbeach of, because this was considered a vessel as well. It wasn't attached to the ground, right? Mobile.
In other words, the leftover. That's the
Most are. Nesachim. Nesachim are the libations, and Meiser is the leftover. Shirayim was the other word for leftover, right? Ibergeblibina. So, okay, so that's going to be the question. We didn't finish the Brisa yet, but that's going to be the question. The other opinion here is that there was a discrepancy in the way, if the person pledged a certain amount based on what the market price was, but then it changed, you would end up having to pay a larger amount, even though he was able to get the same amount of produce with the less money, but he had to pay the larger amount because that's what he pledged. So that extra would end up is also called Meiser Nesachim. Those are two opinions on what's Meiser Nesachim. Mizbeach ha'ela halishkes va'azaris by mekachi bedekabayis. That's a permanent altar, the outside altar, and then the lishka, the chambers, and the azaris, all of the upkeep for those that came from kachi bedekabayis. That's the temple upkeep. Chutz l'chaimis azar by mishari halishkes. There was what was remaining after the year was up, what would they do with that funds? Those funds would go for the temple upkeep that was outside the actual Azara, outside the wall of the Azara. What was outside the Azara? It was the Ezras Nashim, the front room that had 4 rooms in the corner. Maybe that's what you're referring to. That the other things that were required for the city, the towers, other things that came from what was left over, and when the year was up after Rosh Nisan, and they made a new collection. What do they do with money from last year? They used it for the city. Okay, so we have a question because here we see that klishars come from Ma'aser Nesachim. So the
money that's left over, they go back to the stockpile from which the tumors on which go.
Right.
So it's not money left over from the tumors on which go.
No, this is Mishiyare Halishka. What's left over there after the year's up. I think that's what's done.
There was left over from the private chests
Right.
that wasn't used.
That would be Shiare Truma. Yeah.
So we can actually get back double the
Right. Yeah. You'll see there's a few, there's a bunch of different shiurim there. Well, Tanaihi, the way to resolve this contradiction is to say that it's a machlokes. Tanan, we have a mission that goes like this. Ma'aser Truma. This is talking about what's left in the boxes after Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's what you're referring to. So they can't use these funds for sacrifices anymore because they have new money that came in, even though that was being used the whole time. But what would they do with it? They would make it into gold plate that was used to cover the walls of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Rabbi Shmuel Amar Ma'aser Peiros was left over from the fruits. L'keitza mizbeach was used to keep the temple, to keep the altar always busy. Yeah. Very good. I didn't notice that.
The 4 worms.
The Kodesh HaKadoshim was gold. I didn't notice that.
See when you learn a way, things and then you remember and then you go back.
Okay. So we're going to say later what my superior said, but it goes to Ketz Mizbeach. Ketz Mizbeach is when there's not a lot of sacrifices being brought. They would just keep it active. They would bring other sacrifices. Ma'aser Truma, it's like snacks in between meals. Ma'aser Truma, what's left over from the Truma went to. Oh, I skipped. No, this is Rabbi Shmuel. Is Ma'aser Truma is the klisharis that's used for the klisharis. Ma'aser Truma was what's left over in the boxes. So now we have a machlokes between the Tanakam and Rabbi Shmuel. What was done with the Ma'aser Truma was it used to cover the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Yeah, but here we're using the word Truma to say what was elevated out of the boxes. Truma means like removed or elevated. Rabbi Kiva Imer Ma'aser Truma l'keitz mizbeach. Kiva says what's left over from the community sacrifices in those boxes goes for the keitz mizbeach, keep the altar busy. Ma'aser Nesachim, what's left over from libations, which we said before, the 2 possibilities of that. That's the klisharis. Who said that before? That was Bryson. Rabbi Chaninas Kanakayin Maimer, he should know, right? He was the deputy Kayin Gadol. He says, Ma'aser Nesachim l'keitz mizbeach. What's left over from the Nesachim went for the altar, and Ma'aser Truma l'klisharis, which is the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. What's left over from the sacrifices goes for Kli Sharis. But they disagreed with what Rabbi Shmuel said about the fruits. Peiros Mayu, what are you talking about fruits? What is that? The Tanya was started in the Brisa, Ma'aser Truma Mayu Oisimba. What's left over from the fruits? What would they do with it? Ma'aser Truma, what's left over from the boxes? What would they do after all the sacrifices were done and the year is up? And what are they? So it says, like Peiros Bizol, they would buy fruits for cheap, and they would sell them high. Buy low, sell high. And then with the extra money, they would use just to give these donation offerings on the altar to keep the altar busy during the when it's not a busy time. And that's we were taught that the Meiser Peiros goes to Ketzim Mizbeach, which is Rabbi Shmuel's teaching.
So during working hours, they're always like something.
Yeah, they tried to keep it. Yeah, in between the two components, other sacrifices could be brought. If it was a slow day and there were no sacrifices there, so they would just bring the sacrifices. Yeah, so Peiros is the produce. What they would do is they would buy produce, sell it at a higher price, buy wholesale, sell it retail, and then that money, what would they do with the income? So there's a little investments going on here in the temple. No, probably to people in Yerushalayim. Oh, Erev Shabbat.
That was
This is leftover money. No, they're using by produce. That's not true. It's regular. The Tana, what does it mean that no one agreed with this? The Tana was taught in the Mishnah, Meiser Shiari Liska. What's left over in the rooms? They would buy oil and flour and they would sell it. And the profit would go to the hektish. That's what Rabbi Shmuel says. Rabbi Kiva says you can't use these funds to investments.
Is this really small?
Yeah. There were two Rabbi Shmuels. So this is his. I think this is the famous one, but I think this is the one that's after the temple. Yeah. Was a Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha Kain Gadol. This is his. I get this Hillel.
What do we think of your Hillel? I've been trying to figure out time.
I think this is the Rabbi Shmuel that did of the Mechilta, but the one that says Mechilta to Rabbi Shmuel, the one that has the Rabbi Shmuel line in Shlishas Midas Attorney Dashes. This is probably him. Rabbi Akiva's friend. Yeah. I think so. Well, the Gemara explains why can you not do investments with the temple funds? Well, it's my time Allah. It's funny, no one's thinking that maybe they're going to lose money. I mean, that would be my answer. Let's see, why can't you do investments with temple funds? Because you don't know if it's going to go up, it may go down.
Thank you.
So the answer over here is that we don't want to make this so wealthy. They're not making petty change over here. The temple is so wealthy, they're not going to sell little stuff. Well, B'Shelani in my time alone. What about money that's supposed to go to tzedakah? Not supposed to make investments with that either. Well, it says Dilma Misrami Luanya Balaka Lemesava. It could be that a poor person is going to come and you're going to say the money's all tied up, or it's invested in these funds that you can't take out until you wait 6 months. Right? It's locked up, and there's a penalty if you take it out. So they don't want to do that because they may have a poor person that they're going to need to support right away. Mishalach LaMedina Sayyam. Okay, we go back to the Mishnah.
Those are the two reasons why you can't sell. That's why
Right.
He said, goes down and was money.
No, that would have been my reason. Yeah, but I don't know why the Gemara didn't even think of that.
It's the idea that it's a place of wealth.
Yeah. No. Because it's a place of wealth and there's no poverty there. So poverty would symbolize that there's a little bit of things left over. Let's try to make money off this little bit. So a place of wealth, you just let it go. Don't deal with the petty stuff. They're only dealing with big things. Not that there's a little money left over that you have to invest in.
If the poor person comes and he's all tied up.
Right. You should not. You should not invest temple funds. You should not invest poor people's funds. The temple funds you don't invest because we don't want it to look like we're poor. We need to invest the little bits that's left over. And the poor people funds we don't want to invest because we don't want it to be tied up in case a poor person shows up.
That's the answer to Rabbi Akiva.
That's right. That's the explanation for Rabbi Akiva, right? Yeah.
You know, poor people fund is a giant fund.
Right.
Millions and millions. Don't they invest that?
Yeah, I'm sure it's invested. Right.
And not if it's just like a small commodity.
See, in those funds, what they probably do is they probably only use the interest. Yeah. That's how the fund works. So you're talking about should they be investing the interest again? Maybe not. Okay. Misha halach lemedina sayam. Someone that goes overseas, and what did we say in the Mishnah? And his wife wants food. So there was a machlekes between Hanan and the sons of the Kohanim if she swears just to get food. Hanan said that she swears only at the end, not to get food. Bnei Kohanim Gedolim says she swears at the beginning even to get food. What does at the end mean? It means if they hear that he dies and he's going to collect the ksuba, she's going to collect the ksuba. Yeah, that's would be this opinion that holds that she's allowed to go to the no. When she goes to the husband, she has to swear that the husband didn't leave her anything. That's my like. Well, Itmar, we have a statement as follows, which is a statement of Amiroim, which is a machlekes. Rav Amar, Paiskim, Mezainis, Ishasish. Rav says that if there's a woman whose husband went away, Bezdin does go into the property and takes food, takes from the estate. They sell it off to give her food. Shmuel says they don't. What are they going to do? How's she going to? They're going to have to. They can't sell it from him. They can't sell from the husband's funds. Amar Shmuel Maidli Abba. Shmuel says that Rav, Abba is the name, that's what Rav is called. Rav agrees to me, the first 3 months, you definitely don't go and take food. You have to wait 3 months. Why? Because a person always has something left over in his house that could last for 3 months. Cans. Probably means in the garden and there's things that could still ripe, the things that you could pick and whatever. Well, everyone agrees that if they hear that he dies, that they have to supply his wife with food that they're going to start selling from his property. We didn't hear that he died. And the question is there funds available? Let's take a look. Rav Amar Paiskin. Rav says you give her food. Because he's obligated to give her. Shmuel Amar Paiskin. Shmuel says you don't give her. Well, if he agrees that the husband's obligated to feed her, but my time, what's the reason? Rav Zvid Amar Mitzrari say we have a concern that maybe he actually left her money and she's just taking twice. Double dipping. She already has the funds. She's claiming that she doesn't have. This is just, she doesn't want to spend that, let's say. Rav Papa Mechashim Shem Amar, let's see, maybe they had an agreement already that she doesn't get food because she has her own income and she was keeping her own bank account, her own income. She was keeping her salary. And that arrangement means that he is not obligated to feed her. Now she's just showing up thinking that we don't know anything about this. And she's asking for food. My Binah, what's the difference between these two explanations? For Shmuel, it says that the Bezdin doesn't sell off his property. It could be Nayo, let's say this is a woman that's mature, but her income, she doesn't have she's not highly trained, skilled to be able to make an income that would support her. So we're really not concerned that there was ever an arrangement that she's going to support herself. But we are concerned that maybe he did separate funds for her that she has it hidden somewhere. Inam in a savings account. Inami kitana v'safka. Or maybe the other difference could be where this is a very skilled young girl, and maybe she could earn her own living, and maybe there was that arrangement. But we don't think that he would have dedicated funds for her food already when she's so young, because they wouldn't have done that for a ksuba, for a young person, for a young girl. When she's older, they think that maybe she's already concerned about, long-term things, and there's money that's been separated. Okay. Tanan. You bring proofs this way and that way. Who's correct? Rav or Shmuel? So we have a Mishnah. Mishnah says, Mishalach l'Medina Sayam. This is a familiar Mishnah. Someone that goes overseas, Vishti Tivas Mazonis, and the wife wants food. Chanan says, she only swears at the end. That means if he died, she wants to collect the ksuba. That there was she wasn't given the ksuba yet. Bnei Kainim Gedolim say that she has to swear even before she collects food, that there were no funds given for that. See, very clearly, I don't know if she swears, she doesn't swear, that's a machlaikas, but very clearly, if she swears, according to everyone, the Bezdin's going to sell his property to take food. It's a kasha on Shmuel. Outcome like pligi Elenian Shvua, Abel Mazani Avin and La, everyone agrees that she's going to get food. Shmuel translates this Mishnah talking about, we heard that he passed away. And everyone agrees that if he passed away, even Shmuel agrees that we're going to take foods for her.
It's right. Literal.
Yeah.
Sons of the Kohen Gadol.
In the Mishnah we had is Dayani Gezei, Snei Dayani Gezei Seibir Shalayim.
Yeah, that means
Admon.
sons of. This is a specific event.
Yeah, specifically.
The sons of the Kohen Gadol.
Arguing on the Sana. Right. Yeah. Maybe they were.
I think they would all of them.
And then when they argue, afterwards we're going to have arguing with Adman. But here it's just Hannah. Adman's going to come in. Okay, so that's our answer. The answer is that that they heard that he passed away. Tashema, Mishalach Lamedina Siamish, the Vas Mazanis, Benikanim Gedelim, Tishava, and Namale Tishava. Vimbava Amar Pasakila Mazanis Neman. We have a same story here, but just one addition. What happened was a man goes overseas, his wife asks for food. The Bnei Kainim Gedelim say that she has to swear. Chanan says she doesn't have to swear. We know that already. And the added detail now is if he shows up and he says that I already gave her food, he's believed, and she has to give back what the Bezdin gave her. Now, what we just did was, remember the case before, when we brought this before, we said, see, she gets food. So Shmuel said, we're talking about we heard that he died. Now he's showing up. Gemara says, over here also we heard that he died. That's why she's getting food. It says, but he showed up. How did you say he died? Gemara says, that's not a problem. We heard that he died, but he didn't die.
I can see. Story of Master Shahada. Something like so you must listen to our slides for the exact verbiage of the story. When something like this, they get a phone call from the nursing home that the mother died. That's a baby. Say, all right, start. They do the funeral expenses and they take care of everything. This and that. You know, and they come and they show up. And why did they bury the mother? You know, already this is post-op, post everything. It's right. They bury you after a certain amount of time. I don't know if it's or whatever. The guy gets a phone call. The girl gets a phone call. Hello. How could you get them called? I'm dead. You know, so she went to they thought she was dead 2 months ago. They called up the nursing home. The nursing home says, oh my God, Joe, this is we made a mistake. We informed you about the wrong lady. Now this family said, what do we do? They called the real family, the children, and they said, look, I'm sorry to tell you that we buried your mom. You know, and they called the Jewish burial. The mother, the daughter on the phone says, my mother won. Like, what do you mean? She says, we wanted to cremate her. She said, oh no, I want a Jewish burial. Talk about how stuff. Wow, what a story. So if you want the exact words, you gotta go into it.
Very good.
I had to share that. What a story.
Okay. Tashima, come and listen. Misha Allah Medina Sayam Vishlit Vas Mazinus. Someone that, if you want more of this, by the way, come tonight.
More digression.
Someone goes overseas, his wife is asking for food. If the husband shows up and says that, what do you mean? You're supposed to be working. So then that's permissible. What does it mean permissible? The imba, it's imba okay, let's see the next line. Kadmu Bezdin or Pascal, if the Bezdin before he said this, if the husband says that you work and say you can keep your own income, officially her income is supposed to go to the husband. But now that he's going out, he's out of town or whatever, he says if you want, you can just support yourself. Fine. But if the Bezdin already had sold some of his property, Masha Pascal, it's too late. See? Kashan Shmuel. They're selling his property for food. It's not a problem. Shmuel's always going to be able to get out of this by saying that we heard that he died. Whenever you have a proof, Shmuel's just going to say, well, that's the story. We heard that he died, and so when he dies, we sell the property. Someone that goes overseas, his wife wants food, the bezin goes into the property and they support his wife. But not for the sons and daughters and not for another matter. We'll see soon what that means. Rav Sheshes says, so what do we see over here? That the bezin could go to the property. It's Kashan Shmuel. Rav Sheshes says, no, we're talking about over here where there was an apotropos, there was a trustee that was meant to support her. And over here, we're not concerned that maybe he had allocated funds because he put a trustee in there. And obviously, he didn't say that you should keep your own income because there's a trustee there. So if there's a trustee, then we're going to give her food. That's what he set the trustee up to do this. If there's a trustee, so why don't the sons get food and the daughters? It says because the trustee was only for his wife, not for the kids. My pascha. So why did the Brisa not say that? That you can't just decide on your own what the case was. The Brisa should have said that. Rav Papa says, he argues with Rav Sheshes, says that's not the story of the Brisa. The Brisa was Kshama by Shemes, Beid Echad. He, the Bais and Suve Beid Echad, my mitzvah, Mazaininami Yavinillah. there's one witness that say that he died. Now, since with one witness, she's allowed to go get married, she's allowed to go get remarried, then she's also allowed to get food. Usually we don't rely on one witness for monetary things, but because over here, one witness would tell us that she could get remarried, so we're going to rely on it for monetary things as well. We're going to consider him dead and we're going to sell his property to get her to give her food. But for the sons, if they would say, okay, we heard that he died, let's go into the property, we wouldn't let the inheritors go in because we only have one witness that he died. We don't have two. So therefore, we don't sell the property for their food either. My davar acher, what was the davar acher, the other matter that you mentioned? We don't give her jewelry. We don't give her money for to give to tzedakah. Mandar metachshit calls him tzedakah. The one that says we don't give her jewelry, for sure we don't give her for tzedakah. Mandar mitzedakah, the one that says that you give her for tzedakah, that you don't give her for tzedakah, but we do give her for jewelry. The tinval. We don't want it to be to look disgusting, so she has to have jewelry. Yeah. He still doesn't want, not over here, she's still his wife. This is, he doesn't want his wife to look, well, I guess it is B'Shasham B'Shemes, so she is allowed to get remarried. She would want to be attracted to be able to get remarried. Although that's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, he doesn't want her, even as his widow, to look disgusting. That's what it means. Tashima. Maybe, but he doesn't want it as even as his widow with his name on her. Oh, this is the widow of so and so. We don't want. He doesn't want that. Oh, the widow of so and so looks like such a beggar. You know. That's the girls, right? That's going to be the girls, right? See that?
Wait, the girls who
there's girls and boys. Yeah. There's girls and boys. When it comes to the girls and boys, the boys have to beg and the girls get the food. Yeah.
along with the wife.
Along with the wife.
Boys beg on behalf.
No. So if there's just enough for Tashima, the Isha Shalal he Ubayla Medina Sayam. A woman that her and her husband went overseas. They went on a trip, vacation. She comes back, she says that he died, the husband died. If she wants, she could take food. If she wants, she could collect the whole ksuba and then that's it. Remember, when she takes it, that's all.
And
she comes back.
That soaking wet.
She comes back and she says, Gershani, he divorced me. Gershani Bailey, my husband divorced me. Well, Miss Parnessas Vailachas Atkadik Subasa. She can still take food, which usually after she's divorced, she can't take food, but we let her take food up until the amount of the ksuba. Apparently, we're not believing her. Let's see. So the question is, 1 second, how are we giving her food? We said that if the husband's still alive, we can't just give food. We hear that he died. There were two cases here. One was that he died. She says he died. One that says he didn't die. They just divorced him. So it says Maishnad Kadik Subasa. So if we heard that he died, then why are we only giving her up to the ksuba? She should be allowed to. She's really a widow. We don't believe her that she's divorced. She didn't bring a ksuba. She didn't bring a get. So we say, we would have given her food forever, even past the amount of the ksuba. But she told us that she's divorced. Now we don't believe her. But that doesn't matter. She messed her. Okay, according to you, at least you're divorced. We're not giving you more than the ksuba. She should have, yeah. And now it's too late. She can't change the story. It says that a girl that rejects her husband because she's a young girl, she was married under 12, and then she just walks out of the marriage, she doesn't get food. What's the case? We can't say that while she's married because she's that's the whole idea. She's married, she has to be supported by the husband. It must be that the husband went away, loves the she borrows money for food, and then she walks out of the marriage. The husband doesn't have to pay back this person. She has to find the funds to pay him. Time of the mina. What's the reason why the husband doesn't have to pay? That's because she rejected the husband. But if she doesn't reject, then the husband supports her. They do take funds from
Because if she rejects, it's a retroactive loan.
right.
It
was never his obligation. So Amalach Shmuel says, over here it's a little different. Over here I agree that we give her food. Why? What are you worried about? If it's because, this is Shmuel not talking, this is what Shmuel would have said. If it's that maybe there were funds that were allocated for her, he never does that for a child. He only does that when she's older and more concerned about the serious things. If it's because she's able to have her own income and she's maybe has her own income now, she's taking twice. She's keeping her income and she's also taking from the husband. Usually a child doesn't have enough to be able to support themselves, enough income. So my Havi Allah, what's the end of this whole story? Rav and Shmuel, we give Kios Rav Dimi Amar. When Rav Dimi came, he said, the story came to Rebbe in Beis Sharim. Remember we said Rebbe lived in Beis Sharim, right? Yeah, he went to Tziporitus when he was ill. So the story came to Rebbe in Beis Sharim, and I'm sorry, and the pasuk lamazainis, he gave her food. Lefnei Rabbi Shmuel b'Tzipori, comes Rabbi Shmuel in Tzipori, v'lei pasuk lamazainis, and he doesn't give her food. Toiba Rabbi Yochanan is astonished. Rabbi Shmuel shlei pasuk lamazainis. Why didn't he give her food? There was only machlekes Chanan and the bnei kainim gedolim if she has to swear before she gets the food. But of course she gets the food. Amar Rav Sham Barabba Kvartig Mar Rabbeinu Shmuel Bebavel Rabbeinu Shmuel Bebavel B'Shisham B'Shemeis. We already learned. Shmuel already answered that. Said that we're talking about where we heard that he died in that Mishnah. Over here, we didn't hear that he died. That's why Rabbi Shmuel didn't give food. Amalei Pasrisa L'Kulei Hai. You've examined this Mishnah so well. You've interpreted. Passer is to interpret. You've interpreted so well. I don't know if that means he accepts it or he rejects it. I'm not sure. Kiyasu Rabin Amar, when Rabin came, Rabin was also a traveler, just like Rabdini. But he came later. He said, it's exactly the opposite. Rabbi did not give the food. When it came to Rabbi Shimon, and he did give her food. Exactly the opposite. He asked the now Rabbi Yechanan's question. It's not on Rabbi Shmuel, it's on Rabbi. Why does he not give her food? The whole machlekes was only if she has to swear. But of course she gets food. Shmuel already answered this. And then Rabbi Yechanan says, you've looked into this so well. Okay. The halacha is, according to Rav, that a wife gets food. When her husband goes on a trip, after 3 months, they go in and they start to sell property to feed her.
Did we learn that there are three biblical obligations? Three biblical food, clothes, and some sexual things. So he has this biblical obligation.
Right.
You say he has this obligation only.
Right. Right. We just have a concern Shmuel had this concern that maybe there's money that he already did that. Or maybe he got out of that biblical obligation by saying you keep your own income. Right.
I also spoke about
Right. Right.
Our life just had a bad habit. Building two. Yeah.
The guys without jobs. So that's the first point that we had. Allah like Rab. A woman is allowed to tell her husband that I don't want your food, I'll keep my own income. It's also the halacha. The halacha is like Rav Zvid with kunya. Rav Zvid says, "Hi mani the kunya." These vessels of kunya is when it's glazed. So it's earthenware vessels that are glazed. So are they considered earthenware or are they considered metal? They're glazed with metal. Well, like lead or something. It depends what type of glaze it is. If it's white or black, sharu, that's permissible. That means that it becomes considered metal. But Yeruki, it's asiri. If it's green, then it's considered earthenware and it can't be kashered. But when did we say the white and black are good? That's only if it doesn't have cracks in it. But if the glaze has cracks in it, asiri, then that's considered like earthenware, and the glaze doesn't help. Let's go further. Someone that goes overseas, and someone gets up and supports the fellow's wife. Nice guy. Sees this woman has no support, so he supports it on behalf of the fellow that went overseas, the husband. Chanan said, "The nice guy, but he lost his money. He's not getting it back." The husband never said to support his wife. He gave it as tzedakah. The Bnei Kainim Gedalim argued on Chanan. They said no, he can swear how much he spent, and then he could take from the husband. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm Ben Harkness says, like the Bnei Kainim Gedalim, that he can swear and take back from the husband what he supported as the funds that he used to support his wife. Rabbi Yechon Zaka says the opposite. Chanan is right. He put his money down on the horns of a deer. Not going to see it again. Okay. Tanan Hassam. Tanan Hassam was taught in a Mishnah over there. Someone that takes a vow, he's not going to have any benefit from his friend.
I just said, my son Danny, he's in the field, so it's a broker. Told me that it's true that the queen, he says,
The cracks, the white.
But he was aware of that. It's a deal.
It must have been a different sort of glaze, not just the color. It was. Yeah.
But even
How old?
But he was aware of
Yes, antiques like from Roman times or antiques from like really?
from real things to copies of it. And they sell copies.
Okay.
Still selling. I sell anything that they can supply. You come tonight to buy anything that's in the house.
For the right price.
I need to pay the telephone.
So you should advertise this a little different. You should advertise this see him for bringing as an auction. Okay. someone takes a vow, he's not going to have any benefit from his friend, or his friend won't have benefit from him. So shekel is shiklei. When it comes to giving the shekel, remember the coin that you have to give once a year? You can give the coin on his behalf. Now, a friend can't have benefit from him. So how's he allowed to give the coin? We'll see in a minute. Can also pay up his debt. Someone's coming to collect money, he can pay the debt for him. Machlei avidasi can also return his lost object. Sees his donkey wandering, he can put it back in his yard. But if there's a place that you take a reward for returning a lost object, people are not the hektish, then that reward is going to have to go to hektish. She's not allowed to take it. Okay, now we explain this. We understand the case where he's allowed to pay the shekel because mitzvah covered. Giving the shekel is just a mitzvah. He didn't really, the friend of his, the non-friend of his, didn't really get benefits from this because he just did a mitzvah. Tarmin over here means that when they actually bring these sacrifices, when they take the truma from the lishka, they're taking it on behalf of people that lost their coin, or on the ones that were collected, and the ones that will be collected in the future, even if they never end up being given. So why is it? So what's happening? That this person, the sacrifice are being brought on his behalf. Let's say Shimon. The sacrifice are being brought on his behalf. Now, all that happened was that there was a mitzvah that was done that he also gave, but he's anyways getting the sacrifice on his behalf. Mitzvah covered. They're also allowed to return the object because that's a mitzvah to return the object. Now, even though you can't give tzedakah to him and say, "Oh, it's a mitzvah," but that's because you're actually losing. But here, it's his own object, so he's not losing, and he's not the person's not giving from his own. He's just giving him back what's his. Okay. Right. When he pays his debt, the guy's gaining. We're talking about, you know what type of debt we're talking about? Talking about someone that supported the wife while he went on a trip. The guy doesn't have to pay him back. So this guy that took a vow is paying the nice guy that supported the wife, because over there he's not really gaining because he didn't have to pay it back anyway. Rava says, we don't have to say that that's the pshat, because the Rabbanan said that he does have to pay it back. He borrowed without any end time when he has to pay it back. Yeah, it's supposed to pay it back, but there's no time when he can claim it. We get why Rava did this. He doesn't go like Rav Ashi, he doesn't want the Mishnah to follow only the opinion of Chanan that says that there's a type of debt where he doesn't have to pay back because he gave money to his wife. Why doesn't Rav Ashi say like this? Say that it was talking about that there was no time frame of when the debt needed to be paid back. No, less like I understand that he doesn't have monetary benefit, because the person can claim his whole life, and he says, okay, but I don't have the time. It's never due. But kisufa mi leslie, but is he not embarrassed to see the person? So now he's, well, maybe not just to see the person, just in front of everyone, that he's known as a person that doesn't pay back his debt. So he's taking that off by paying for him. So he's getting benefit. So here also he's getting the certain benefit that he doesn't have to pay back, that he doesn't have to, is not embarrassed. And okay. So let's do one more. Mishnah. Adman Aimer Shiva. Adman has 7 statements that the sages, remember we had these 2 Dayanim, we had Chanan and Adman. Well, Adman has 7. Mishemes v'niach banim ubanis. Someone passes away, he has sons and daughters. There's manshan nechasim merubim. If there's a lot of money left in the estate, so abanim yarshim abanis nizainis. The sons inherit, and the daughters take the food. They live off. They get sustenance from the estate. And the chasim muatim. Let's say there's not a lot of funds. So abanis yizainav abanim yachzor al psachim. Then the daughters get the food, and the sons have to knock on doors to collect for their own food. Adman Aimer, Bishvil Shani Zakar Ipsadati. Adman says, because I'm a male, I'm a man, so that's why I'm going to lose out over here. Amar Rabban Gamliel, Rayan Estivri Adman. Rabban Gamliel says, I see Adman. I see his opinion. Seems correct. My Kamar, what was he saying? Amar Abai Achi Kamar. Abai says this is what he means. Bishvil Shani Zakar Royal Asik Bater Ipsadati, because I'm a male and I can study Torah, that's why I lose out. Amalei Rava Mandasik Bater, the Yars Mandali Asik Bater Layars. What are you mixing that in? Torah study. There's nothing to do with inheritance. Only someone that studies Torah inherits. Someone that doesn't inherit. Inheritance has to do with the family, and if it's the way it works, it doesn't have to do with his knowledge. Rava says this is what it means. There are cases when I get the better end of the deal. Admin is saying, if there's a lot of funds, so I get the whole inheritance, and they just get the food. I understand. But just because there are cases when I get the better end of the deal, does that mean that I get nothing now? We should split it. Okay, let's leave it over here. We're on, 108 B.
Have a good week, anyway.